All right, welcome back to another episode of Crestview Leads, where I, Tim Bollert, City Manager, get to have some conversations with some good friends of mine, people who've had influence in my life, specifically in the area of leadership. And today, I've got my good friend David Deitch from down in Niceville. Dragged him up here this morning. How was the traffic, David?
It was good until I got to Crestview.
Until you go, listen.
No, it's good. It was easy.
Not too bad, not too
No,
bad.
it's
So,
good.
so David is currently the city manager for the city of Niceville. We met prior to him coming into that role. He was with the JAG in the Air Force, and so I'll let you tell a little bit about that story. But how this all started is he sent me an email and said, I'm thinking about this crazy idea about being a city manager. I'd like to come hang out with you for a day. And since then, I think we've been friends.
That's right.
It's worked out pretty good for us. So, David, let's start by telling us a little bit about yourself, kind of, where you come from, how you got here, that kind of stuff.
Sure. I grew up in Illinois in a real small farming community up there, raised by a single mom most of my childhood. Okay. Quickly realized that I didn't want to work on a farm my entire life, so I enlisted in the Army before I graduated high school. Did 3 years in the Army, quickly realized I didn't want to be in the Army either.
Right, because the food is better in the Air Force, I heard.
Oh, far better. The Army is the Air Force's best recruiting tool.
That's it.
So I did my 3 years, got out, went back to Illinois for college, came down here to Florida for law school, and then I started really missing the camaraderie and the esprit de corps of the military, missing that brotherhood. So I was blessed to be accepted into the Air Force my second year of law school, finished out law school, took the bar here in Florida, and then served 21 years in the Air Force.
Nice.
As a JAG, as an attorney, traveled, got to live and work and serve all over the world, all over the country. I think I moved 13 times in 21 years.
Wow.
I had a really, really diverse legal career, most of it on the prosecution side, but did a lot of operational law as well over in the Pacific. Deployed to the Middle East twice, as military members tended to do back in those days. Once in 2006, I led an Army Civil Affairs team, even though I was an Air Force officer. And then the second time, I was in the Air and Space Operations Center in Qatar. The first time I was in Iraq. The second time I was in Qatar. Then I got here in July of 21. My family and I got here in July of 21 to Eglin, where I was the SJA, or the general counsel for Eglin Air Force Base.
Right. That's how we met.
That's when we met.
First time.
That's how we met. So you and I met 2 years ago when General Garrity came in, and the community welcomed him in. And it was at that meeting where you and I met that I approached you and asked about the city council, or I'm sorry, the city manager role, right, and that sort of thing. I got initially interested in that because when we got to San Antonio, which was our assignment that preceded this one at Eglin, our first church the church we attended, the first weekend we walked in, met my Sunday school teacher, and as men do, what's the first thing the men ask when you meet? What do you do? Right? Yeah. And he said, I'm the city manager. I had no idea what that was. So as soon as I got home from church that day, I Googled it real quick and was like, man, that's great. Because this business is all about serving the public and serving people. Right. And I knew I didn't want to practice law, but I knew I wanted to continue to serve as I had in the military. So this was a great fit. Yeah. And it just so happened that at the exact same time that I was retiring out of the Air Force, my predecessor had been in the seat for 52 years, was retiring at the exact same time.
So then you came down, hung out with us for a little while, then put your hat in the ring, as they say, and then was selected by the city of Niceville. So you've been there for a year yet?
I was a year yesterday.
A year yesterday. All right. So the first one's behind you. Now the real work starts.
That's right.
Is that how it works now? So, but one of my favorite David stories is that we've talked several times, and trying to just help David along the way. And so one of the things I always say to David is don't do a whole lot too fast. Or I said to him at the beginning was, listen, once you get in there, don't do a whole bunch all at the beginning. Sit in there and assess it. And he did exactly what I did, which was ignore that advice and go do a whole bunch of things all at once. And so you've been hair on fire for a year now. So that's very, very cool. No, but one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, so I brought all sorts of different leaders throughout this community onto the podcast, and you've been on the list since the very beginning. One, because I just love this idea of having somebody who's been in a position of leadership all over the world is one part of it, but also coming here, settling down, and getting into this new role where you're following somebody who'd been in it for 52 years, like you said. And so when I took the job, people said, why would you take that job? The first guy through the door is going to get his teeth kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to take the job because they've never had a city manager. They don't know if I'm any good or not, right? So they won't have anything to compare me to. I could be lousy. They wouldn't know it. In your role, you had somebody they trusted for 50 years and you came in. So what is, like, going into that, what was the first, or is there anything you said to yourself, hey, as I go into this role, these are the things I'm going to do to try to offset that? Well, that's not the way we've always done it.
Right. That was a challenge because a lot of my teammates had worked for, my predecessor for decades.
Right.
I have some people that worked for him for 30, 40 years. So he's the only boss they ever knew.
Right.
And so I knew going in that change was going to have to be gradual.
And for you, it's 2-year rotations before this, right?
Absolutely. In the Air Force, and actually it was really one, because either you were going or they were going. And so change was a way of life for me. And so I came into an environment where change never happened.
Right.
And so but I recognized that going into this job that I wasn't going to be able to move as quickly as I had in my previous life. And that there's a defined rank structure in the military.
Yep.
From office to office to office, it's all the same. And so I realized that a completely different environment. So one of the things that I certainly had to take into consideration was going slow. Right. Now I didn't go as slow as probably my teammates wanted.
Sure.
But it didn't go as fast as I had planned.
Right.
And then because what I had to do was build trust and confidence in my teammates. And so by making progress slow, by being gradual, and by it being well explained of why we were doing something, I think it has helped with the anxiety and stress that's induced by change.
Yeah. So let's talk about, you said I had to build trust and confidence. And those are kind of really two different things, right? Trust
absolutely.
is, are you going to do what you say you're going to do? Confidence is, can you do what you say you're going to do?
Right.
Do you have a different approach to building those within your staff? So building the trust and building the confidence. Is there a difference in the way you do it?
Well, I think for me, the key to leadership is trust.
Okay.
And so you have to establish that first.
Right.
That
How do you define trust for me? Like when you say to be a good leader, you got to have trust. Define it. What do you mean by that?
Trust is your teammates' belief, God-honest belief that you are capable of doing what you say you're going to do, that you have their best interests in heart, that they are not going to be a stepping stone to selfish, to selfish ambition, but you got their best interest at heart, and so being able to earn that trust, that I am putting them first,
that's good.
and that they are the most important piece. Is something you got to build and you got to earn.
Is there something practical you did to do that? So let me give you an example. So when I came on board, that was one of the things that everybody was worried about, right? They'd never had a city manager. I heard before my rear end hit the first seat in the offices at the city of Crestview, where I did not have a desk. Before I sat down for the first time, I heard people say, oh, this is just so he can get his way to the county.
Right.
So a very practical thing I did to try to combat that was, in my contract negotiations, I entered into the city's pension plan, which required me to, 10 years to vesting. And so there was no way it was just going to be a quick step.
Right.
Is there anything practical you did to try to show or demonstrate to the team?
So kind of along those lines, I didn't do that, but what I did do is I told them, I love this community, and more importantly, I love the people of this community, and I am committed to serving them. And so I'm here for as long as the city council will allow me to be. And while I'm here, I'm only here to serve them. Yeah. And serve not only my teammates, but the residents in my community. So the key to building trust, or one of the keys to building trust, is communication, right? And it's listening. Good. I can talk all I want, but it's listening. And so I'm very, very intentional about how much I listen, because if they know they're being heard, not only listened to, but being heard. Yeah. And that I take their opinions and their concerns into consideration, and I evaluate them appropriately, and then I explain the why of the decision I made.
Yeah, you've said that a couple of times too. So you are very, that's interesting to me, because you come from a military operation, right, where why is not necessarily required. Right. General says jump and you jump. Right. And so, but you've said a couple of different times that you believe that communicating to them the why is incredibly important. I love that coming from the Colonel. So how do you, why is that, what made that an important part of your leadership style?
For me, if you understand, if my teammates understand why we're doing something, why we're going a certain direction, why we're trying to achieve a certain objective, it helps them come up with better ideas on how to do it. Because my leadership style is I don't micromanage. I just say, I want you to get me here.
Right.
I don't care how we get here, as long as it's legal, moral, ethical, and transparent.
Right.
And within fiscal constraints, if that's an issue. And then I get out of the way.
Yeah.
And I empower them to get me there, because coming into this thing, they've been doing it a long time, and I have to trust their wisdom, their training, and experience that they probably know better than me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I trust them to get me there. I ask why a lot, but at the end of the day, I empower them to do the job. I train them, equip them, and make sure they have clear guidance, and then get out of the way and let them do that.
Train them, equip them, and empower them. That's
correct.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So you said, basically what you were talking about is you listed off a few things, and one of those was to be transparent. So you said legal,
moral, ethical, and transparent.
Legal, moral, ethical, and transparent. What I love about that transparent piece of it too is, so coming into this role over here, that was one of the things that was surprising to me, that I had to push so much as well, right? And I think that some of that sometimes, especially in small government, local government, we're in a smaller form of local government, not small, smallish, small adjacent.
Right.
Sometimes there's a lack of maybe confidence, which then gets to where they don't necessarily want to be as overall transparent about the decision-making process. I tell my team all the time, if our ideas are good, they'll sell.
Right.
If they're not good, they shouldn't.
Right.
So we're just going to tell our story, tell the truth, tell it loud, tell it first, and tell it often.
Right.
And so that's I love to hear you say that too, because I think that's gonna and your community is going to get behind that as well. Because what happens is, when you get, because you and I deal with it, right? We love these Crestview word of mouth. You got a Niceville word of mouth.
We got concerned citizens of
Niceville, which is that.
And they're very concerned.
They're super concerned and uninformed some of the times, probably. But what I've found over the last few years, in particular, the last couple, it grows more and more, is that because we've been so transparent on our decision-making process, like turn lane coming into the Crestview Commons, we told the entire story about why that is delayed behind the rest of the project and how it wasn't going to come in. What happens now is, when someone who just wants to complain for the sake of complaining gets on there and does it, others come to our defense. Because if our story is if our story is valuable and our story is worth selling, it will sell every time. And so that's what we do. We tell our story, tell it frequently, tell the truth, tell it often, tell it first.
I totally agree. I have one PIO who educates 10 people, who educates 100 people, who educate, and it just builds. We have the same dynamic down there of those who are uninformed. They get informed by those who are, and so it takes a lot of workload off of us. But at the end of the day, I'm in my role to serve the community, and I owe them transparency. And because if nothing else, they give me a whole bunch of tax dollars.
Right.
And so I owe it to them to tell them how I am using their tax dollars. Yeah. And so we hired a public information officer, which Niceville has never had. We got all the social media sites, and we're working with the other journalists and whatever from across Okaloosa County to tell our story. Because we owe that to our residents.
I agree completely. I think it's an area that local government for a long time just lagged behind understanding the importance of communicating the message.
Right.
Not, and it's not spin, it's communicating the message. Right. We are doing, we're building this road because this is the long-term benefit, or whatever it is. Right. We're going to spend these dollars for this purpose. Right. If the story is good, it's going to sell.
That's right.
And you've been all over the world protecting our right to do home rule, to be here, to govern ourselves. Right. We got to honor it. And part of that is informing the public, and then removing all of this opportunity. Now, people are still going to say dumb things.
Sure.
I probably gave you this piece of advice. Don't ever, no one is allowed to speak into your life that's not in a place that you want to try to accomplish. Right. So if somebody's sitting at the house, sitting on the couch, bad-mouthing my traffic engineering skills, they don't get to speak into my life because they're not somewhere I want to be. But if it's somebody like yourself that picks up the phone and gives me a call, it's somebody that I respect, then I'm going to listen to it. But what we do is we get that message out, and then everybody knows the message.
Right.
And so usually the negative person gets on, talks for a little while, gets a little bit of momentum, and then somebody else gets on board and makes them, rethink their position.
That's right.
For sure.
That's right.
So very good, very good. So coming into the role, here's a surprise one for you. What is something that surprised you about, what's something that you had to deal with that you can talk about on here that surprised you had to deal with so early? Like I keep telling everybody I'm going to write a book about the different things. What's something that you're like, man, I never expected to be dealing with?
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't realize how passionate my residents are about trees.
Trees. I love it.
They are very, very passionate about trees. And so there was an incident very early in my tenure where we had 4 trees that were in the middle of the road.
Right.
And they were damaging the road, they're damaging the stormwater infrastructure, et cetera. They were,
$1 million fire trucks.
Our fire trucks could not get down that end of the road because of these trees. And the residents who lived right there by those trees were having hard times getting in and out of driveways. And so they came to us and asked if we can remove those trees. I took them out without talking to the residents in the community.
You didn't get consensus.
I didn't get consensus from those who lived on the road.
Yeah.
And other than the ones who asked me to take those
Right.
trees out. And so I heard about it for many, many months after that. Every city council meeting, there was a number of people who came in.
Yeah.
So I did not anticipate trees was going to be the issue. Because quite frankly, I came in on the 1st of July, and I had 30 days to do my budget.
Yep.
And so and we ended up raising the ad valorem down in Niceville, and which hadn't been done in a decade or more.
Right.
And so I assumed the backlash was going to come from raising everybody's taxes, because we also raised everybody's enterprise fund rates as well at the same time. Never got one complaint about raising people's taxes, but I took 4 trees out, and they got after me about the trees.
Let me give you a piece of advice. Last week we did a ribbon cutting on a splash pad. I left that ribbon cutting for the splash pad going, this is exactly why I do this. When I saw those little kids getting so excited, so build a splash pad, put some trees, and then you can name the trees after your fans and put them there at the splash pad, and you'll be good to go.
All right.
I think you guys need some more splash pads. So, all right. So between the military and this, give me like leadership style, moving from a military organization to civil organization. What are some of the things that are similar? What are some of the things that are different? What do you like better?
The similar, I'm going to have to chew on that for a minute. In the military, when a new colonel walks into the office, everybody knows who they are.
Yep.
And there's a defined rank structure. In the city government, we really didn't have a defined rank structure. And again, unlike the military where everybody's moving every year or two, and my team had been together and had been a team for decades and decades and decades.
Right.
And so that was again probably one of my biggest challenges is trying to work through that dynamic.
Yeah.
The one thing that I learned was where I had once thought having people in the same position for years and years and years would benefit an organization from a continuity perspective.
Right.
I soon learned that while that might be true, the flip side of that coin is there are scars and a lot of history between teammates who've worked together for decades.
Right.
And so trying to get past that to break away those scars, to try and build communication up, down, and sideways was a little more challenging because of the history that I was not a party to.
Sure.
And so getting past that was a little more difficult. But so right now we're building out the structure, the rank, the command structure, if you will,
right.
that exists in the Air Force that doesn't exist here. We're building that out. But at the end of the day, people are people.
People are people. Right.
And so it doesn't matter if you're wearing a uniform or you're wearing civilian clothes. People are people. And the key to getting a team to gel, again, is listening to them, speaking into their lives, supporting them.
Being genuine.
Just being genuine. That's right.
At the end of the day, if people, there's an old adage that says nobody cares what you have to say unless they know how much you care. Nobody cares what you know unless they know how much you care. Right. And so that old adage holds true all the time. Right. And I agree. People are people. we use a term here at the city of Crestview that's called, we're going to be technically sound, or this is the way we explain it. We're going to be technically sound, and we're going to put people first, which means I'm going to train you, equip you, and empower you to go and do your job.
Right.
And at the end of the day, when a decision has to be made, once you've checked all the legal boxes, the next thing you're going to do is put the people first.
Right.
And so if that means we got to stay just a little bit late and take somebody's water bill and pay a little bit of overtime, that's what we're going to do, because we're going to put people first.
Well, for me, mine is the people is first, because whether it's the Air Force or it's this world, in this world, if you take the people out of it, I'm just a bunch of buildings, roads, pipes, parks. People are the key in any organization, and so my focus is the people. Always has been, always will be. Again, whether it's the Air Force and so my focus is on my teammates, because I know that if I pour into them and I empower them and I mentor them and I love on them, they'll get the job done.
Right.
They know how to do the job.
Right. I believe that the majority of people want to do a good job.
Absolutely.
The majority of people want to please their boss.
Absolutely.
The problem a lot of times is that we do a poor job of creating an environment where we can encourage their successes, help them through their failures, and then reward them when they accomplish the goal that they've been set to accomplish. And we just don't do that very well. And so people become disgruntled, and in that disgruntlement, they become discouraged. We talked, the ladies and I were talking right before you came in about this idea of when somebody gets into a position and they stay in it their whole career, how sometimes that in and of itself can stagnate them.
Absolutely.
And so keeping it open so that you can move them from one job to another as they grow and professionally, and then hiring based on people, and then getting them fit to where they can produce the best possible product. Well, we're just about to run out of time. It's been great chatting, but before I let you get out of here, I want to ask you a question I ask everybody. If you look back over your career, is there someone, a leader that had influence over you that you have looked up to, that you want to emulate in some kind of way, and then why? Yeah,
so it was my second assignment in the Air Force was over at Kadena Air Force Base in Japan.
Okay. And my son-in-law is there.
Is that right?
Yep.
Beautiful base, beautiful country, beautiful island. But I was there, my boss there, Colonel Alkaline, again, a mentor to this day. 6 months after getting there, I went to Iraq. I was gone for a year. And so when I came back from Iraq, had a rough tour in Iraq, and I was in a really, really bad spot. So being a guy, I'm not going to get any help, right? But he knew, he could see I was hurting.
Right.
I didn't want to, because of where I was at, I didn't want to take. They were forcing people to take 2 weeks off. I got home on a Friday. I was back in the office on Monday, even though he kept pushing and pushing and pushing.
Right.
And I said, no, I want to be with the team. I don't want to sit in my house by myself. But he saw that I was hurting, and so. Over the next few weeks, he pulled me into his office almost on a daily basis and just listened to me.
Right.
And there were times that I just, I lost it. And he just listened. And he came alongside me, he put his arm around me, and he picked me up and he dusted me off because I was in a really, really bad mental spot when I came back from Iraq. But he just wrapped his arms around me and just loved me as a father. It was, and so he was a colonel, I was a captain, huge rank disparity. Didn't matter. He just loved me because I was David.
Right.
And so he picked me up, he dusted me off, and again, treated me like a son. Going back to that caring piece, right?
Yeah.
But then there's another piece. That 6 months on the back end of my deployment, we had an inspection, and every couple of years, a legal office in the Air Force gets inspected. And so it's a big deal. Generals come in, they inspect your process and make sure you provide the adequate legal support to your command. And so he's an 06, and I remember it was a Saturday morning. The entire team was in there. We're banging away, getting ready for this inspection, and I hear this noise outside my office. And I look over and I look out the window. He's out there pulling weeds out of the flower beds.
Nice.
The senior ranking guy on the team, he's outside pulling weeds.
Nice.
He's one of those guys that if he would have walked into that office to any one of us, or just the team as a whole, and say, "Hey, look, I'm about to go invade hell.
Yeah.
Would you guys come with me?" Every single one of us would have kissed our family members goodbye and would have ran into hell behind him like raving lunatics.
Right.
Because we loved the guy.
Yeah.
Because he was
so
a
good.
servant, and he loved on us, and he loved on all of us.
Yeah.
I've taken that model and throughout my Air Force career and now into the city management position.
Yeah.
That's who I want to be as a leader.
I love that. I love that, especially because a couple months ago when we had a tornado up here, and I told this story at our council meeting, we get a tornado, I get a call from David. David says, hey, can I help any kind of way? I've got all my guys. It's their day, y'all's day off. I said, no, being that big bad dude, just like you were talking about, no, we got it, 100%. Don't need any help. Thank you very much. He calls again. Can I help? Can I help? Can I help? Finally, you talked me into it. So your team's coming up to help us bring up equipment to help us clear some trees and stuff, which we really needed, and I was just being stubborn about. But you came up to help us out, and I get out there, and you're out there. I'm looking around going, where's David at? Well, David's got a chainsaw in his hand, cutting trees down just like the rest of the guys. So that's very, very cool. Great opportunity for you with your team to do that, but also to honor the guy that you look forward to. What was his name?
Al Klein. Colonel Al Klein.
Colonel Klein. So you got an opportunity to honor him and his legacy. And that's one of the things that we talk about in here a lot, is that being a leader provides us the opportunity to do the thing that's most important. And that is to call out in other people their greatest potential. Right. And that's what allows us to live beyond this lifespan.
That's right.
It's how we leave a legacy. So, man, David, I appreciate you coming out so much.
Absolutely.
I love the fact that the Niceville city manager was drinking out of a Choose the View cup, because we want you to choose the view. But no, thank you. And to our listeners, those of you who listen to the podcast every time, thank you so much. If you get a chance, we're on all the different podcast platforms. Please like it, share it, tell your friends about it, send me bad comments about it, whatever you want to do, but go out and have a great day.